drifting beneath the horizon. Body's weak, but I'm trying to make it to shore. But I'm falling short, I need you more. Wave after wave, I've been sinking. So unto your promise I'm clinging. You say that I'm strong, to you I belong. Keep holding on. You are my anchor, so steady me now. You are my anchor, you're keeping my feet on the ground. In angry oceans you've never broken through every wave of the
And
storm.
we're off.
You
We're off
are
to the
my
races.
anchor,
Look at that.
so steady me now. Come steady me now. When I get tired of fighting all of the fears
gonna hit the
I've been
wall?
hiding, you gave me a breath and tell me to rest. You never left.
Trying not to get any
I
patience.
can hear you calling me by name, pulling me up from
And
under
look
my
at how
shame.
well
Never be
you're
the
doing.
same. I can face anything, so let it
One
rain.
foot in front of
You
the
are
other.
my anchor, so steady
Say hello, Larry.
now. You are my
He is working hard.
you're keeping my feet
Smile.
on the ground.
Can you smile?
Angry oceans you've
Okay. I know you're in pain.
wave of the storm. You are my anchor,
I think he's got it. He's just
so
the finish line.
steady me now.
And he made it.
Come steady me now. Don't
Do you have any
let
words
go.
for us? Yes,
Don't
thank
wanna
God.
do this alone. Don't let go. I know that I drown on my own. You are my
See y'all. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Love y'all too. Love you too. Good to see you too. Hey. Good to see y'all too. Hey brother.
Looking good.
Thank you. I feel good. Hey. Good to see y'all too.
I know this road is
Thank you,
getting
man.
long.
Thank y'all.
I heard you say it's over.
I love y'all.
I said
Thank
I'd
you.
never be too far, and I meant that from the heart. I see the mountain getting high. I see it stacking up against you. I always said you were a fighter, but you've got your doubts tonight. Well, I'm here to remind you, it don't matter where you come from. I know we can get through this. It might feel like it's been so long, but we keep on keeping on. It might feel like an uphill climb, always some kind of battle, but you got more than you on your side, and we gon' see the light. We gon' see the light.
that don't know, I'm Larry Gregory. I've been going here about 10 years. Me and Jamie's been together about 13. She grew up in this church. Between Jamie and I, we have 2 kids, Addie and Asher. And together, I have 5 kids. I have 3 older kids. One's here, Justin, and I have Jonathan, and I have Jacob. And between all of them, we have a bunch of grandkids. So every now and then you'll see us with little babies. And so, yeah, Addie and Asher at a young age are already an aunt and uncle. I've been in the fire service and EMS service since 1990. So 30 years that I've been a combination of this. I always felt drawn through my life to help people. And one journey I had to learn through this was to let people help me, because EMTs and nurses and stuff don't usually make good patients because they think they need better. So, but you know, it's been a journey, needless to say. But somewhere around about get my calendar up. Mid-January, somewhere around the 15th, 16th, 17th that week, I felt bad. Sunday the 19th, I went to an urgent care. They said, yeah, you got a sinus infection. For me, that's very common because I constantly keep sinus infections 3-4 times a year. I done had a couple since I've been home, so I'm like, okay. Well, that Monday I wasn't feeling good. Tuesday, not much better. Wednesday, them 3 days I called out of work. One day one of my kids was sick, and Asher stayed home with me and everything. That Thursday I was off, and I didn't feel much better. So I told Jamie Friday morning, I said now it's Friday morning the 24th, I said, I'm just going to go on back. I went to urgent care, and they said, started checking me out, and they said, you short of breath? I said, no, I'm not short of breath. She said, your oxygen's at 84%. Well, me being an EMT, I'm like, well, that ain't good. And he's like, are you sure? Like, yeah, well, let's recheck it. We rechecked it again. They said, you don't feel bad? I said, I feel bad, but I don't feel sick. They said, well, we done some tests, and we're pretty sure that you got pneumonia, so we're going to take you to regional. So went to Mary Black, not thinking that the worst is going to come and I'm going to end up in ICU. I'm thinking I'm going to get a breathing treatment, get something, antibiotics, and go home within 24 hours, you know, just a basic stay. Well, that was Friday, and they said, yeah, we're going to admit you and everything. Saturday, it started going downhill. Saturday, I got to where I was breathing harder, labored, couldn't breathe, I was suffocating. They had me at this point on 12 to 14 liters of oxygen, and I was still at a 90%. Normal person with no respiratory issues should be at least 98. You know, so 96 to 98, I'm still at 90, and I'm suffering. So that Sunday, which would now be the 26th, I told the doctor, I said, look, doc, I said, you might as well go ahead and intubate me. And the lung doctor said, you want to be intubated? I'm like, yeah. If you don't know what intubation is, it's when you go on life support for either rest or to actually for life support, which ended up for me. So they got things ready, talked to my wife. She's like, okay, I'm on board if that's what he needs, you know, everything. So they put me on life support for rest because I told him, I said, I can't keep breathing like this. You know, somewhere in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, you're going to go ahead and do this. Let's cut to the chase. Let's go ahead and know this. He's like, okay. Well, that Monday, Jamie was still at the hospital and everything, and she was out on a thing to come back to see me, and she noticed that I was sounding different. So she got respiratory. Respiratory come in and said, Miss Gregory, said, I think his ET2 bulb, there's a little bulb at the end of that tracheal that holds it in your lung in place. He said, I think the bulb has busted, so it's no big deal. So we're going to take this out and just reinsert another one. Well, Jamie's still in the ICU room watching and everything because it's not a big deal. And all this is knowledge from Jamie, and if I'm telling it wrong, she can stop me, raise her hand. But like I said, she pulled the tube out and said, I just sit straight up off the gurney. My eyes rolled in the back of my head. I come back down, heart rate dropped, respiratory dropped, everything. I went in respiratory distress, and within a minute I was in cardiac arrest. I've been in the back of the ambulance in the emergency room I don't know how many times, doing chest compression, CPR, whole 9 yards, watching the partner shock them, helping them give meds, whatever else. So I've been there. And so I can only imagine what my wife's going through at this point, seeing all this. Well, they finally realized she was in there, and they calling the doctors, calling a rapid response. Everybody's coming in, get her out of here. They set her and the family sat in a waiting room probably 3 hours. They come back and said, look, Larry's alive, but he's very critical. And said, we need to get him out of here. We need to get him to Spartanburg Regional. And said, he's not even really stable enough to transport, but we need to get him regional. So somewhere that week, that Tuesday or Wednesday, I got to regional, and then on the 30th, they come out and told Jamie, said, we got bad news. Said, Larry's still on the ventilator, but his lungs are so full that he is not getting proper oxygen exchange, and he's going in full organ failure. That if his organs do not get better oxygen exchange, it's going to be fatal. So I'm preparing you for the worst. He said, there is this machine that we can do, the third picture, if everybody remembers, there's a machine, it's called ECMO, that acted as my lungs. That's what saved me right there, other than Jesus. Jesus saved me and gave the knowledge to build that machine and everything. So I'm thankful that I had Christian doctors, Christian nurses, several doctors. Just pray, Jamie. Need to pray, need to pray, need to pray, need to pray. And so they put me on that machine. They said, now, here's your next hardest decision. He's responding, but here at Spartanburg Regional, we cannot maintain this machine. Said he's going to have to go to Charlotte. He's going to have to go to Duke or Raleigh-Durham, Duke, or either have to go to Atlanta, to Emory. And Jamie just chose Charlotte. And they said, well, the only thing about Charlotte is if he goes in full lung failure and has to be on the transplant list, he'll have to be moved from there. She's like, we'll cross that bridge when it comes. So that big old ambulance, the blue ambulance, come pick me up. I done had one ambulance ride already from Mary Black to Regional, which was a critical transport. That team sent about 5 to 6 people specialized in the ECMO transplant. Everybody had a hand on some kind of equipment, from hearing other people that was there and everything. And they telling the family, if you want to see him, you need to get on going now, because once we come out of this room, he gets in that truck, he's gone. Said, say you buys or whatever. And at that point, I done had a lot of friends telling me, said, Larry, you was bad. Said, we know this all too well and seen patients like you that don't make it. And we had said our goodbyes to you. They said, when you got in that ambulance that night, we didn't honestly think you was going to make it. I said, I hate to tell you that. So I got moved to Charlotte. I stayed on that machine for 12 days. Day number 12, I started improving. Day number 13, the first thing that goes when you're sick is your kidneys. I went in full kidney failure. So day number 13, it was 2 steps back. So I had to start going on dialysis. I stayed on dialysis to mid-March. Somewhere towards the end of February, they're talking to Jamie. They said, look, it's probably going to be his new normal. Said, there's a lot of unknowns. He's going to have memory loss. He's going to be debilitated. He's been down now for 30-something, close to 40 days, intubated, unconscious. So he's got to have some kind of deficit. Loss of this, and Jamie's like, no. Said, I'm not giving up hope on him. Said, every test you do, you still show him has brain activity. Every test you do, his heart is good, and his lungs, y'all say, are improving. But you can't give me an answer why he's not waking up. I said, no, we're not going to move him. No, we're not going to give up on him. Well, I vaguely remember, and I asked Jamie what day it was. I woke up March the 2nd. And I just kind of was blurry-eyed and looked around and saw Jamie, and vaguely remember I couldn't move. I could barely move. Felt like I was in a coma, and I just waved my hands at her, and she come over to me. She's like, "You're awake?" Well, I'm thinking, yeah. What's wrong? I've been asleep for 24 hours. I didn't have a clue what's going on. She's like, "Rest, just be still, rest." And I'm like, "What's the big deal?" And I realized I had a trach. And I'm like, well, this ain't good, because I've been doing this for 30-something years, So I know, and I'm like, I'm not at Spartanburg Regional, so something major has happened to me. Doctors come in, I don't even remember it. Next 2 or 3 days is in and out. I remember Brian coming, and Brian's like, "You're a miracle," and praying over me, and I'm like, what is he talking about, a miracle? Well, finally, I work for American Transmed Ambulance Service, and Transmed come and see me at least once a week. Brian and the owner, Roger Shiflett, and the other owner, Greg Kirby, would come and see me. Well, I remember them in there, and they're talking about, okay, now that you're awake and you're doing better, we can send you to another hospital. I'm like, okay, whatever, and Jamie's deciding all this, and she's like, "Where do you want to go?" And I'm like, it's up to you, but if we can get me back closer, that'll help on the family and the drive and everything. So we chose restorative care. Well, finally, they let me go to restorative care on March the 12th. Got up that morning, or I was still in bed and everything. They come got me. Had normal meds that morning and everything, and I was on all kind of crazy meds for a while. Still loopy because I was on paralytics to keep me paralyzed, keep me intubated, to keep me from being restless. So I was on a lot of drugs that I was coming off. Finally got to restorative care somewhere around 2 o'clock. By 3 o'clock, I had my first and only ever seizure, and it was bad. So that night there, I still had the tracheal during all this. I ended up with a dialysis shunt, still had that in me, and I had a feeding tube. I was on a feeding tube, so I had tubes and stuff running everywhere. And that night there, they put me back on the vent because they didn't know what caused it, and put me back down again in a coma, more or less, because I had the seizure. Next couple days are blurry, but then I started waking up, and things started getting better and better. And then, the COVID hit somewhere the 18th or so, and they told Jamie that she couldn't stay with me no more. And I've never seen that woman cry so hard in my life. And then it was left up to me. I couldn't talk on the phone, so it's by myself. She's by herself. She would call every day, talk to the nurses, and they would call her because they know she was concerned. And she would call every hour, at least every 2 hours, checking on me. Well, finally, I started responding better, getting better. Finally got to where I could sit up with 2 people. And, one day, I told Jamie to bring the kids by, and I was going to try to sit up on the window. And a nurse, she set me up on the side of the bed, about broke her back to help me just lean over and wave at the kids. And that was just awesome. They hadn't seen me since the 1st of January, and this is April now. So, or March and everything. So finally, in March, the 1st of April, I got to go to another hospital, to rehab hospital. I got downgraded from ICU to a monitor room, to a regular room. And then April 10th, I got to move to SRI. And that was Easter weekend. That Sunday, I just cried my heart out. And talking to a guy named Mike, I said, "Mike, so what if I never walk again?" He said, "Man, you can't think that way." I said, "Man, I can't even get out of bed." He's like, "Man, you can't think that way, dude." He said, "You got to have faith." That Monday, I stood up for the first time. I'm not sure if I had that picture on there, but I stood up for 2 minutes for the first time. Well, that Wednesday, I tried walking with help. I walked 10 feet. I'm like, okay. The next time I walked was 30 feet. Like, well, I'm getting stronger. And each day I was doing some kind of different therapy there because that's all they work on. By the time I left there, I had walked close to 550 feet in 18 days there. And it was a miracle. I mean, nothing short of a miracle. Learned to walk again when I was at restorative. Had to learn to eat again, get strength. I couldn't even, they was like, Larry, you're not a light person. Can you help us pull up in the bed? I couldn't even raise my hands to reach up in the bed. When I went to SRI, I couldn't even roll over in the bed. By the time I left, I was rolling over trying to pull myself up in bed and everything. And I got home, got to walking. My last time walking with a therapist, I walked 0.6 of a mile, 3,333 feet, somewhere odd than that, come out of my driveway down the road. When I got discharged from the hospital, Jamie's like, we got a problem. I'm like, well, what's the problem? She said, the church is going to be there, and then you got some people at the house. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It was an awesome sight. It was awesome. Looking at March in my life, laying in that bed, I couldn't move. I was on dialysis. I was miserable. I was hurting. I was in pain. Muscles wasn't working and everything, man. I had somewhere I did have doubt, but God let me walk through this church and let me walk up these steps. I might still be slow, but He's allowed me. And Brian was right. I was a miracle. A lot of prayer. And one of the things that touched me is talking to someone. They said, they seen Addie come down here one day when y'all was praying for me down here, and Addie's just crying her eyes out praying for her daddy. I'm glad and thankful that I do go for a praying church like here. And I had so many. I never knew the 30 years that I've touched so many people, that I've helped so many people. I've had so many people reach out to me or my family or through my sons or, through another coworker or someone I used to work with. There's a lot of them in here today. And, man, we was praying for you. We had our church praying for you. Man, how you doing? And, man, I had churches all over the place praying for me. And I never knew a little old boy from Duncan could have touched so many people's lives. And for the ones that don't know it, Brandon's little baby, not a baby no more, but Bradley, her first trip was being that guy right there, a paramedic. She was less than a day old, emergent traffic to Greenville. God gave me that gift to drive, and God gave me that gift to be an EMT. I don't know if I'll ever get back on an ambulance, but that was my passion. That was my love, and still is my love, that and firefighting. And I've been honored to have done what I wanted to do in a career that helps other people. But to tell you, from that day laying in that hospital bed, intubated, not knowing I'm in this world, it makes a difference. If you get anything out of this, one thing that I learned from my wife through all this is that you got to have faith. And I can't imagine the faith, but the faith that she had. The doctor's telling her no, and she's like, no, it ain't over. It ain't over. The doctors told her that week, said, we're probably going to move him somewhere because, he ain't going to change. She's like, mm-mm. So she come in there and she said, well, look at that. The doctor's like, well, look at that. He's better. She's like, mm-mm, that's God. It's God working. So, I thank you for this church. It's awesome. My favorite Bible verse is Isaiah 40:7. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, because the Spirit of the Lord bloweth upon it. Surely the people is grass. The grass withered, the flower fadeth, but the word of God will stand forever. And I can tell you one reason why I love that Bible verse. In my years at the fire service, I've seen Bibles in house fires that was not touched. In the late 90s, my house burned, caught on fire. When I had my boys, was probably 2 or 1 and 4 and maybe 6 years old. My house caught on fire, lost everything. My Bible was in that house. Sifting through Rumble that week, I found a Bible, my Bible, that was in where the dryer was, and the fire started in the dryer. And every page was singed. The outside leather cover was gone, but you could read every page of that Bible word for word. I'm talking about that's where the fire started. Singed clothes, the wall collapsed, water, that's where the most water in the house was put, everything. But you could still read that Bible word for word. His word will stand forever. I hope I touched some people's heart in here today. I hope that you know that even through the times that God is still a miracle worker. We'll never be able to answer the question of why does God take someone and why does God let someone live. But I know he wants me to live to tell his story. Jamie, you got something you want to say? I wasn't going to embarrass her.
I just wanted, if I could say a few things. I can't thank all of y'all enough for all you've done for us and the prayers. People ask me how I did it. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm not a strong person. I never was a strong person. When you go through something like this, you're strong. God makes you strong. That's the only way that you can survive an event like this. So one of my favorite verses is 2 Timothy 4:17. It says, "But the Lord stood by me and strengthened me, so that through me the message would be fully proclaimed and the Gentiles would hear it." Those doctors, I know with the way the world is now with COVID, you can't really be there with your patients, but if I could tell you anything, you have to be there. You have to be there, and you have to be their voice. They can't do it, so you have to be there for them. I mean, if you're not there, then you need to be calling, you need to be trying to find out some answers. But the doctors there had no answers. They couldn't tell me anything. You know, he was in a coma. They couldn't tell me from one day to the next if he was going to wake up, if he wasn't going to wake up. Every nurse had something different to tell me. You know, you had your nurses that were like, he'll never be the same. He'll have disabilities. He's going to always require home health. You had the neurologist that the scans, the MRIs were clear. The EEGs were clear. He wasn't having seizure activity for 48 hours. He's laying in a bed for 39 days on a vent, out to the world, didn't know anything. And the doctors, you know, the last couple of weeks were like, this is your new normal. This is very well the possibility that you are going to live with for the rest of your life. And you can't believe what the doctors say. You don't go on what the doctors say. You go on what God says.
Mhm.
And, you know, if you have them tell you this is the way it is, you're just going to have to get used to it. Don't listen to them. You have to pray. You have to pray every day. And you have to say, you know, God, this is in your hands, and I'm giving it to you, and you have to be okay with the outcome one way or the other. I mean, if God would have took him, that was fine with me. That was really fine with me. You have to get to that point. You have to get to the point and say, he's yours, and whatever you want to do, however you want to handle this for your glory, then that's what I want. And, you know, it's just God's sovereign, and he has a plan for all of us, and we're not special. We didn't do anything to get a miracle. you know, God chose to use us for a purpose. And I don't know what it all entails right now, but I can tell you that this is the biggest movie that could ever be made. Grey's Anatomy or Chicago Fire or whatever you want. I could role play you a movie to be famous, and it's all about God. It's not about the doctors. It's not about what I wanted. It's not about what he wanted. It's God.
Amen.
And I did have to tell plenty of doctors that I wasn't giving up, that there was a God. And so the day that he finally woke up and the little smart doctor come in there, and he said, well, this is 8 steps forward. I said, no, this is God. 2 days later, they were moving him out. I mean,
Amen.
you have to wait on his timing. You have to pray every day, all day, and you have to trust God. You have to trust God with everything you got, because somebody said, I don't know how you did it. And I said, I didn't do it. When you have nothing else but God, he will get you through it. He will take care of you either way.
Amen.
And when you realize that it don't matter what comes today or tomorrow or the next day, if I get corona when I leave here, God's still going to take care of me, and he's still going to take care of Larry, and he's still going to take care of our family, and whatever happens is what God wants to happen. Not what the doctors or what I want or what he wants. You have to believe, you have to have faith, and you have to trust God.
Amen.
And he will stand with you, and he will give you strength that you didn't know you had. You would have never guessed that you had. And you will sit there and look at doctors and tell them you have a God.
Amen.
And we'll wait and see what God does. So that's my little 2 cents that I didn't know was coming out.
Amen.